Yes, hello guys, welcome to another video today. Today we are going to be talking about minors and international transfer. So I think this is also a challenging topic for most people and it gets confusing sometimes. So I'm going to be trying to break it down so that you can get a little bit of idea about it. So as I said, today we'll be breaking down the international transfer of minor. That is Article 19, 19Bs and 18 and 19 tier of the study material. This is also one of the most intriguing topics, but also if you misunderstand it, then your transfers of the players can get blocked. So pay attention and just pick the story part of it because as I said, these things also when you speak about rules a lot, they are quite boring. So moving forward, I try to give an example and then speak at try to explain this thing more naturally so that you can the storytelling part can stay on your brain. Okay. So first of all, let's move straight into it. If you're watching from somewhere, always remember just to say where you're watching and also leave a comment if you want anything to ask about your situation, whether you're a FIFA licensed agent or you are trying to become one. But if you're watching from somewhere, leave a comment section. So, and then we go from there. Okay, let's see. I wanted to leave a note, but I'm not going to actually leave a note that. But let's just see if you are watching from somewhere, just let me know. Okay, if you're watching from somewhere, let me know. Good. Okay, but anyways, going straight back to it. Okay, the general rule, actually, international transfer only applied. This is just a general basic rule. International transfer only applied if the player is 18 years and above. That's the general rule. That's the main rule that we all know. So I think this is quite basics. Basics. Everything else is an exception. What I mean is, of course, there are situations that transfer can happen, but everything these are exceptions, and FIFA applies these exceptions strictly. So let's look at these exceptions. If you're not going at 18, I mean if you're not 18 plus. So exception one is parents move. So let's take for example, let's say this is quite common when you always hear the situation of a player is 15 years and then his parents move to France. Let's give an example. So he moves to the parents. That is international transfer can happen. That's an exception. So parents move to country and not for football related. Let me say the parents move for their job. And then the young player who is probably like 15 years had to move. Then he benefits and then it becomes an international transfer because he is under the guidance of his parent. But remember, if linked to football, this will be rejected. Let's take, for example, so if you're moving, it has to be not linked to football. So okay, so this is the first exception that international transfer can happen without you being 18. So I think this happened to many players. I remember the case of Drogba saying a story of when he was young and then his parents moved to, or no, he moved actually to his uncle place, but well, anyways, but people moved due to their parents' job. And this case is quite tricky because I remember there was a young, I mean, there was a friend of mine who called me why he got scouted by Arsenal. He got scouted by his son got scouted by Arsenal. So he was asking me about this situation. He said he's the FIFA license. I mean, he is a parent and his son has been scouted by Arsenal, but he doesn't know what to do, and he doesn't know what can he do. And I was telling him that well, in this situation, there are only these rules. Let me say that you can except your son turns 18 because his son was 14 then. I said except your son is 18 you cannot move on reason or you cannot just move like that. It has to be reason related not related to football. And I was giving him all this exception that we are going to be talking about today. So let's move on. Exception two. This is when you're 16 to 18 years old. So this transfer is inside EU or EEA, or the transfer inside same country, or it's happening inside same country. Club obligation. So when I say EU or EEA, so let's take for example, if you're not 18, the transfer in EU, you can sign a professional contract, or you can move around EU when you're 16 to 18, because it's only inside the European territory. So this can happen. And these are what will be happening. So transfer inside the same country, club obligations, provide proper football training, guarantee academic and slash school education, ensure safe living standard, provide mentor or accommodation, provide proof of association. If one obligation is missing, then transfer is rejected. All these are not met. This is exception 2. So quietly clear. So this only happens only inside the European territory. So exception 3, this is 50 kilometer border rule. So when players living within 50 kilometer of, let me say, of the border, and then the club is also within 50 kilometer of the border. So let's take for example, a player lives, let me say, you live in a country, but your border to that country, which is 50 kilometer border, your border, you're 50 kilometers to the border, and also there's a club that is 50 kilometers away from the border. So which means if you join in total maximum 100 kilometers, then the player can leave home, can stay home, and then go to train in that team. But in this case, both association must approve, because if you're already away from your country, or yeah, then you are already using there are two associations involved here. So both associations must approve for this to be function. And if they don't approve, then the transfer doesn't go through. Exception 4 is humanitarian cases. Humanitarian cases are cases like refugee. So let's take, for example, recognized refugee can be registered on pro or amateur. Asylum seekers, amateur only, under 18. Okay, so let's take for example, if you are a recognized refugee, there's a difference between refugee and an asylum seeker. A refugee is someone who has already been granted protection uh, based on humanitarian situation. What I mean by that is like war. When you have war in a certain country, then someone's flee, run away from his country. This can be like humanitarian protection. But you have been granted already refugee status, which means you're recognized as a refugee in that country and you're allowed to live under the protection of that country as a refugee. But the difference here is when you're an asylum seeker, you are still seeking to live there, to stay in that country, which means you have not yet been granted protection. Okay. So the rules are different in this case. And then exception 5, that's the last one, student exchange. So let's take, for example, minor moves temporarily for an academic reason. Maximum registration, if you're registering, is 1 year, and club must be purely an amateur club. No links to professional clubs. If you're moving based on student exchange, you can only play amateur football, and the maximum year is 1 year. Okay, you cannot do anything with the professional football. If you're looking at professional, then you have to go back, because it's temporary. Okay. And then we look at the case of first registration rule. Applies applies even if the player never registered before. Applies if not national. Applies if he hasn't lived in 5 continuous years. So first registration rule, that is if you move to a country and you want to register with an association. This is what we call first registration. Your first registration in an association. This always occurs when, for example, when most foreigners or immigrants relocate, they're always having the first registration rule. It occurs even if you haven't lived in that country for 5 years, so you can still register. So this is what they're just trying to say here. And then the next thing we talk of, if a minor is 10 years or older, so this require international so approval required for international transfer. First registration, special nationality cases must be approved before you have an ITCT request. So this actually means like if you're 10 years old and above, they have to be an approval coming from your country about of your international transfer, your first registration, and special nationality cases. Okay, before you are getting an international transfer request. And if you're under 10 years old, association responsible to is responsible to verify all these exceptions. And in these cases, the responsibility lies with the associations to try to check that everything is okay. So I hope this is a little bit clear for you, you people. Okay, let's talk about Article 19B, as the academies. Uh, Club must report all minors in the academy, even if not registered. So if you have any minor that you are training in your academy, whether it's a private academy or whatsoever, you have to report it to the association. Most reports, because if anything happened with that minor, you will be held responsible if he's training in your if he's training at your academy and without being registered, and you don't report anything to the association. This is your rule as a club to keep that. And then the next one, we talk of trials. Article 19, that is trials. The general rules for trials is professionals, and of course, professionals need a written permission. So most clubs actually these days don't, how do I say, most clubs don't actually follow these rules. You see, this is because they have nothing. They don't, the people actually doing trials, let me say the young people trying to get trials for a club, have no ideas that there are certain rules that even that you follow trials. So I give an example. You have a player goes for a trials to a club because he has no agent. That club takes that player for 2 months, and then don't give that. Then probably, let me say, at the end of 2 months, when they have gotten a lot of players, because clubs do a lot of this kind of tricks. So when they have gotten enough players, then they send that player away. But they didn't send that player before because they discovered that we might need him, we might need him if we don't get so much players. So many clubs do this, that they bring you, they say, oh, you come for trials, they see that okay, you are a little bit okay. They don't give you a contract yet, but they just wait and say, well, keep coming, keep coming. They are playing tricks, keep coming. Then after 1 month, they say nothing. And then when they have started getting now players and they are giving them contract behind, and they discover that, okay, now we don't actually need him. Then they try to get rid of you. And hello, I'm here I'm again from Canada. Yeah, hi, I noticed you yesterday. That's nice. Nice to see you. You came back. I hope you're getting more value from what I'm saying. But good to see you again. And I appreciate that at least you're trying to learn. I think you said you're writing the exam also as well. But okay, let's continue. So you're always welcome from Canada. Don't if you have any question, you can always try to ask me. Do not hesitate about what I'm saying. Then I can try to explain. So, but about these trials, this is something that we need to pay attention from. We need to pay attention, or most people who are watching try to pay attention to this, or if you watch this video after FIFA trial. So to go for trials, you have a duration for trials. Excuse me. That's 21. So 21 and below, maximum is 8 weeks per trials. Over 21, maximum is 3 weeks. So if you know what you're doing, you before going for trials, you're letting them know this. Okay. So these are just the things that you have to pay attention to, and so that clubs don't take delaying your time, and for you not to go for, for you not to go for another trial somewhere else. So you have to be very aware of this. Okay, I'm going to leave it here today so that at least you can get this information. I don't want to drag it more a lot. So we're going to end here, then we see how we continue tomorrow. So I just wanted to explain this so that you can get it. Okay, any question, you can leave it tomorrow. You can leave it here. I'm going to see it and reply to you tomorrow. Take care, everyone, and have a nice evening. Bye for now.